Ellie, thank you for being here. It's shortly after the conference, and you took us on a tour last night.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that we're in Glasgow with this conference about citizenship, education, and social inequalities. You wrote a book about the so-called Glasgow effect. Can you shortly tell the audience firstly, who are you, and what is the Glasgow effect?
Yeah, so I'm an artist and I'm an activist, and I've been living in Glasgow for 11 years. I'm not born in Glasgow, I was born in London, but I've been here for 11 years. And the book, The Glasgow Effect, is about an artwork that I did in 2016 that was very controversial because I chose that title. The title is a term taken from the field of population health, and it's used to describe what was then Glasgow's mysteriously poor health outcomes compared to very similar cities, post-industrial cities in England, like Manchester and Liverpool. So although Manchester and Liverpool very similar levels of poverty and deprivation, in Glasgow, there's 30% more premature mortality than in those cities, and nobody knew quite why. And just by coincidence, in the year that I was in the city doing the project, the public health experts published a report where they claimed to have solved this mystery. And there's lots of different factors that contribute to it, but one of the big ones is the post-war redevelopments that happened in the city. Massive scale redevelopments, huge amounts of inner city housing was demolished, people were moved really far out of the city centre, the population of the city almost halved, and all of these factors contributed to the breaking up of communities, smashing solidarity that had been there for a very long time, and deteriorating mental health problems, which lead to physical health problems. So that's one of the big factors. Another one of the factors is actually the local council and the way that they behaved, particularly in the 80s when Margaret Thatcher was in power. In the UK government, that the Glasgow City Council, which was a Labour council, didn't do much to stand up for Glasgow citizens, and it actually went along with quite a lot of Thatcher's policies and really embraced neoliberal policy, and that people in the city felt like they'd been betrayed. And that's really been the case ever since, I think, with the Labour establishment in Glasgow, is that it's not really sticking up for the city's people, so people have lost all faith in democracy, and that's obviously something that civic education aims to address.
And you had a project about that, and what did you do?
Yeah, so what I did was a very simple kind of gesture. That I'd been living in the city by that point for 7 years. And I found that because I'm an artist and I'm kind of operating in the knowledge economy, and one of the byproducts of that is that you have to do a lot of traveling because ideas are free flowing around the world, and so humans kind of have to be as well. And I don't think that's very sustainable. And so for that year, I refused to leave Glasgow at all, and I just walked and cycled around the city. So I reduced my carbon footprint for transport to zero. And of course, I freed up lots of time where I could invest in, well, do my own research and investigating this stuff, but also start my own campaigns, getting involved in local groups aimed at addressing inequalities in the city, and specifically around the transport network, because I found out in that year that less than half of all households in the city have access to a car, but yet the city landscape is completely dominated by cars. So already that's more than half of the population who have been made to feel excluded, and the public transport, which has nearly all been privatised, just isn't working. It's leaving people deserted, it's really overpriced. And for me, the number one thing that I think we could do to include people, reduce inequalities and make people feel like they can easily engage in the cultural life of the city is improve the public transport network and ultimately make it free. so that people can travel in and get involved, because those are big barriers at the moment.
And do you think you were noticed with your project, and did the council probably listen to you? Is something going to be improved in the future with public transportation? Something? Is there a message for the future?
I mean, my message is that activism works. Activism does work. I mean, it doesn't work instantly, but really what I did in 2016 was kind of the start-up to get campaign groups off the ground, and we've been fighting for 3 years, and the transport bill has just been passed, which will allow for the buses to be re-regulated and for a publicly owned bus company for Glasgow, which we think will be a huge step forward. So activism works, but people need the time to be able to find out how the city works, you know, where the levers of power are, how they can get involved. They need the time to do that, and they need to, but once they get that time and they have the knowledge and they can start to make change happen, that's a hugely empowering experience. I want everybody to have that.
And you know, this conference was about citizenship education and its role for social inequality. What role do you think has it got?
I think a huge amount. I mean, this has been an eye-opener for me, being here at Nece and hearing about the discipline of citizenship education, because I guess I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before, but then it made me reflect on what I was doing in that year and just seeing activism as a form of citizenship education. You know something's broken, you want to try and make it better, so you discover all this stuff along the way. And you know, I just want everybody to have the opportunity to be able to make change in their communities, to help improve their communities, and to be listened to.
Okay, so I'm glad you learned something from this conference. We certainly learned a lot from you. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks for inviting me.